Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show has been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
Having the fear of who's going to see your work, and also saying, well, I'm placing this here now, just for you to just take a little bit of me and try and understand where I'm coming from and who I am.
Today I'm joined by Pogus Caesar. Pogus is a Birmingham-based photographer, director, filmmaker. His street photography, his human connection through his images is spellbinding and grabbed me when I came across his work, documenting the 1985 Handsworth riots in Birmingham. Powerful stuff, but it's only the tip of the iceberg where Pogus is concerned, and we're going to delve deep into his creativity today. This is The Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? Welcome back to the show. If you're a regular listener, it's lovely to have you on board as ever. Hello. If you're new, thank you for checking out this podcast. It's been going for 10 years now. I am a creative coach, an illustrator, an artist, and a writer, among other things. I also go into universities and talk at students on Monday mornings when they look like they'd be rather doing something else. But I love it. My passion is creativity, and that's why I'm here. My overriding mission, which I have to keep checking back in with myself to make sure is still the case, is very much a lifelong cause in elevating creativity at societal and cultural level, because Lord knows we need it with the ills in the world today. But I'm also just a nerd. I love design, I love art, I love storytelling, I love humour, I love individual eccentricity, I love collective eccentricity and communities and culture and all that good stuff. So I like to get people in and talk to them about what they're doing with their creativity, the example they set, how they can teach us something new about our own. I go far beyond the arts. I have the likes of neuroscientists and psychologists and athletes and sports coaches and ex-prisoners, you name it. I've had a 10-year-old kid on the show talking about his knockoff Disney cartoons. So if it's got a creative angle and it can teach us something else about human creativity, then that's what I'm here to do. I mentioned at the top of the show, the founding sponsor is Illustration X. Let's give them one more shout out. They're a wonderful, vital part of this show. You can check them out at illustrationx.com. There you'll find their news section documenting all of the artists they represent, along with the portfolios of all of their animators, illustrators and everything else. Brilliant organisation. Check them out now, illustrationx.com. And I will keep asking, but if you get a chance to support the Ukrainian Institute, please do. These guys do vital work supporting the Ukrainian creative community during this horrific time of war. You can go and have a look, share their work. You can commission somebody if you like. You can look into getting a print from somebody. It's all going on. ui.org.ua is where you can check that out. So picking up from Caroline Christie, my first guest of 2025, I'm carrying on today with Pogus Caesar. Pogus, I'm relatively new to his work. Dr. Pogus Caesar, I might add, is a British photographer, conceptual artist, archivist, author, curator and director. It's funny how these titles as we go through life with our creativity expand. I know it myself. I'm trying to kind of distill it at the moment down to like illustrator, artist, writer and founder of the Creative Condition. I could go host of Creative Condition podcast. I could prattle on something chronic. I could go educator, like occasional lecturer. My word, storyteller, short story writer. God knows, it's ridiculous. I've seen some business cards where they've got qualifications spilling over the edge of them, but we won't do that. It's nice to keep it concise and give people a sense of what you are trying to do. And that's something Pogus and I touch upon today. We talk about what I termed as a circle of competence, and Pogus came back brilliantly with circle of confidence. So we're going to talk about that today. Pogus was born on the Caribbean island of St. Kitts in 1953 and raised in Birmingham. So we're going to talk about his experience moving to Birmingham as a kid. Sadly, invariably, he faced prejudice growing up, as anyone that I've spoken to of colour who moved to the UK around that time, maybe a bit later. And it doesn't end there, does it? Let's face it. But they, in particular, suffered horrendous prejudice, awful stuff. We are going to touch upon that. And this isn't what I want to do with Pogus on this show. This isn't a show about, here's a guy who suffered prejudice and is now doing something about it. No, I want to celebrate Pogus's human creativity because it is rather inspiring, to say the least. So I found, when I was researching Pogus, and we didn't touch upon this in the show because it kind of comes up in the way he talks about his evolution and beginnings as a creator. But I found this piece about Pogus on dodho.com, dodho.com. And here's an excerpt from it. It says, because he goes under the term Schwartz-Flaneur. Forgive the Yorkshire pronunciation of French there. It's always pretty special, Yorkshire saying French, but there we are. Can't really change that. And he says, Charles Baudelaire developed a derived meaning of flaneur, sorry, let me start that again. That's terrible. Charles Baudelaire developed a derived meaning of flaneur, that of a person who walks the city in order to experience it. Schwarz meaning the colour black in German. Schwartz-Flaneur is named after the unguarded moments that Caesar so strives to capture. These images are signature to much of Caesar's work and his dedication to Ilford HP5 black and white film and an old 1983 Canon SureShot camera. The term flaneur comes from the French masculine noun flaneur, which has the basic meanings of stroller, lounger, saunterer, loafer, which itself comes from the French verb flâner, terrible, which means to stroll. Walter Benjamin described the flaneur as the essential figure of the modern urban spectator, an amateur detective and investigator of the city. More than this, his flaneur was a sign of alienation of the city and of capitalism. So, like I said, the Handsworth riots images caught my eye. I came across them through WeTransfer, great feature. We're going to talk in depth about that, about what happened, about how Pogus felt, about why he sat on the images for 20 years before releasing them and why he eventually did. We're going to talk about his nice, mazy career story and his work as a director and curator getting involved in TV and film. Talk about his work with the poet Benjamin Zephaniah. And it's incredible. And one little observation that I did take that I'd like to share with you guys, and this is something, so someone, I think of Adelaide the Mower, of Gush Monday, founder of Bulletproof Agency. I also think of Hector Ayuso, Sarah Brown, the singer, Alan McGee, former Oasis manager. All of these people suffered real abuse of some form in their youth, be it prejudice, be it violence. In the case of Alan McGee, took a good few hammerings of his dad. He talks about that and about the effect it had on his creativity, turning up to London feeling pretty bulletproof, even though it's something that could break a person and is absolutely abhorrent. But in each of these people, I noticed a real steel, a real fire in their creativity. And I'm a big believer in that. Anyone who's read the Creative Condition book, which you can grab on the site or at bentallandwriter.com, I talk about not the value of adversity, because it's the upside of adversity, because no one welcomes it. Nobody wants it. A lot of us might change it if we could. But what's really important is that when we sort of tap into that pain and that hurt and use those emotions and find ways to do that, and I don't believe it's sustainable over a long period of time, over a consistent period of time. But if you can channel what you suffer in the right moments, then it can be absolute rocket fuel for creativity. So that is something also that emerges in this conversation with Pogus. But this was a joy. I'm not going to keep prattling on much longer. Head to thecreativecondition.com now. You can delve into the archive there. You can check out the reading list for book recommendations that will help you with your creativity. There are coaching opportunities. I've been telling you guys about the pit stop recently. I've done 2 in January, which is really exciting because we're getting started. There's interest now. There's potential bookings. It's a beautiful process. Spend up to 4 hours going through a person's entire landscape of creativity. The idea being that it's regrounding, it's recentering, it's course correction, where you look at blind spots, strengths, weaknesses, flaws, frustrations, dreams, hopes, all of that stuff. And by going through this very detailed framework, looking at your environment, your sense of humour, your adversity you've suffered, we help to get you realigned with your pure creativity and put the first steps in place to getting you moving to where you need to go. So if that sounds good to you, get in touch through the website, thecreativecondition.com. Fill out the form, let me know the basics, and then we'll jump on Zoom, we'll have a chat. If it's not right, which sometimes it's not, because the person is looking for something that I can't offer, whether it's actual full-blown career business advice, that's not me. This is foundational creativity to enable you to be at your best creative self and make better decisions for yourself in your own career. And that's why it applies to musicians, to people outside of the arts, to artists, to designers, you name it. It's not really about the career, it's about the human underneath, and I love doing it. So get in touch, thecreativecondition.com. It also works for businesses. I've got some great meetings coming up. So if you're an agency listening to this and you've got staff and you want to really elevate their creativity, I might be your man. Let's have a conversation over Zoom and find out. That's enough from me. Let's get to it. This wonderful conversation with Pogus Caesar. He's not a difficult man to find. He regularly has work shown at the Icon Gallery in Birmingham. Permanent collection, I believe, in the National Portrait Gallery. He's everywhere, deservedly so. A wonderful talent. I would go as far as to say national treasure. Yeah, go on, I'll say it. National treasure. That's what he is. This work is profound. This is the kind of work that spoke to me when I studied graphic activism. As a student on my illustration degree, this awoke something in me that really connected me to my creativity beyond the skill of drawing and my interest in football and wrestling. It took it to a whole new, deeper level, seeing the power of creativity. And Pogus's work is powerful. Profoundly so. That's it. Let's get to it. Let's have a good one.
As a child, I was born in St. Kitts in the West Indies, and we came to England in the late 60s. Moved into an area called Sparkbrook of Birmingham, which at the time, a lot of people from the Caribbean. There were a few Asian people, but it was more like Irish. So for us, we bonded with the Irish. And as we kind of realized later on that, the Irish were our best friends because the British didn't really treat the blacks or the Irish in the best way. So in that situation, you do find a kind of bond. So, growing up as a young West Indian, I suppose I always had a dream to be some kind of creative. Not sure what kind, but I remember my father used to have a lot of books at the bottom of the stairs. And, like at night, because I wasn't a person who could sleep well. So I just go through his Reader's Digest and the National Geographic. And there are all these places like Constantinople. Where was that? You talk about the Mughals. Who are they? There were all these kind of islands and places and situations, and also kind of heroes and heroines, which I was reading about. But I was always fascinated by the images. And, see these wondrous places, and I go like, where's this? Maybe I could go here one day. And some of them I have done, but 98% of them I haven't.
There's something beautiful about that, and there's something magic to me about the curation of books and magazines and their role in our lives, because we don't have any say in that. We sort of stumble across these collections of images and words and stories, and it was the same thing. I mean, I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, but still before the internet, and there was something about that scarcity that I think I look back now and realize that was quite important for me. Was that something you feel the same way about?
I think it was important for me because, again, the books that we had at school, they didn't really show Black people in a good light. You used to have images of Black people running around the jungle with bones through their noses, cooking white people in pots. Those are the kind of images. And of course, some of the language was quite deferential to who we were as African Caribbeans. So finding an alternative narrative of going into these books, not knowing anything about the author, because again, there was no internet, there was nothing like that, other than this was this book and this was the author. And sometimes you'd flip through the pages. I wouldn't say that I read all of them, but just flicking through the page and finding out what was interesting for me. And if it was interesting, I'd really kind of get into it. So I could read about something from China, or then I could go to something happening in the deep south of America, what's happening in Europe. There wasn't much about St. Kitts where I was from, I have to say. But what I think I did was I just really kind of plunged myself into education. And then on Saturdays, I would go up to the Birmingham City Library and I just, take books out with my little card, my little library card, and take books out which I just found interesting. It was only later on in life when I suppose I got much more brain active, I would say, and then maybe more politically active. I was understanding much more about the history of things that I was reading about. But because, again, one didn't have the where or the know-all of how to correspond to it, I would just draw on the back of like postcards and cornflakes packets, things like that. Just make a mark somewhere. I remember drawing a little cowboys and Indians on the back of this postcard, this little stick them up, with a bow. Yeah. So, I suppose I was practicing my craft and how I was going to be later on in life, but still not having a road to travel on. So I was just developing and discovering along the way, making mistakes. And if I made a mistake, I'd always it was only my fault. If I succeeded, then I would clap. But other than that, I would say stumbled. But all the way through my life, there have been people who have found me and have given me opportunity. So I give good grace to those people that gave me an opportunity and gave me a chance.
Yes, those accidental mentors are absolutely vital, and to this day, they're heroes in my life, because there is amazingness to when you make a decision to pursue creativity, either with the heart for a career, however that looks. There's a certain necessity of accidental moments along the way and calamities, and I wish it wasn't quite so, but there must be some of that. Was it supported within your family? Because I know a lot of people face resistance to creativity, but when people are scared of uncertainty, did you face any resistance? Was that encouraged?
Well, I think my parents really wanted me to they wanted me to be a doctor. But I think, if I became a doctor, I'd end up leaving scalpels inside people. Terrible at doing things like that. But, I used to kind of draw, and I always said that I wanted to be something in the arts. I actually wanted to be in advertising, because that seemed very kind of glamorous, and that was the only way that I thought that just by being creative, and you could draw images, because again, there was no computer animation then, there was no AI, everything was done by hand. So I'd look at advertisements on magazines, and I thought, I can draw like that, so maybe I could get a job into that. I think the discouragement was, you'll never make it or you'll never achieve. And that came from a few members in the family. But even though they said you couldn't do that, I still found a way of, just drawing away. In terms of jobs, I worked at the Holiday Inn for a period of time. I was a chef there. I worked at the Birmingham Mint as a dye polisher there, and then I ran a couple of arts organizations. And again, all along the way, those are kind of stepping stones, but not knowing whether you'd step on a stone or you'd fall in the water. And I think that's the great thing with us as creatives. You never know where the opportunity will come. I think we always try and look at, looking like I'm looking straight at you, and I think maybe the opportunity will come from Ben. But then there may be somebody watching this podcast who I know nothing about whatsoever, and they come and tap you on the shoulder. So opportunities always come from the most unexpected places. But I'm a great believer of just going along with it, because, man, we've only got one road, and occasionally we'll go into, I'm heavy on the metaphors. So, now and again, divert down into cul-de-sacs, in avenues, roads, dead ends. But those dead ends, one, either you can stop at the dead end and turn around, or you can find a way up. And there's any dead end, there's always an opening somewhere. And I've always tried to find that there's an opening, whether I have to climb the wall, slip back down again, and then we'll just keep going on, because as you know, on the other side, there's just a whole raft of opportunities that you never knew anything about. And I just give good grace that I'm quite a nosy person. So I always want to know, what's this, and who are you? What do you do? And but also I study. If I go into a situation, I'll watch and I think, okay, I can do that. And I'll make mistakes until I learn. And that's true. Our people have said to me, how do you learn to take photographs? And I said, I just picked up a camera. But how do you know? I said, I don't know. And even now, I still don't know. I just take a photograph of things which I find of interest, And if people like it, then they do. If they don't, that doesn't matter. And it's about, using your creativity to release all of this energy from yourself. Some people do it through sports, by singing. Some people get into all kinds of professions. It's all about releasing the talent that you have, and then hopefully it becomes accepted by the people out there. But then you've got to understand that it's not always your time. Everybody wants it now, and it's not always your time, because I used to look in the past, so why not me? Or, why didn't I get this exhibition? Because it wasn't your time. And because the people, the curators or the people you're working with, they just didn't align with your work or your spirit. So one has to be really kind of patient in this creative world of ours.
You do, and creativity is also informed by that adversity. And I think that depending what day you catch me on, I either find great fear or great excitement in that not knowing who's looking, not knowing where this might resonate, this action. And I think that places great importance on doing it as purely as you can, through personality, through lived experience, and through feeling. And as you say, sometimes being comfortable with not knowing and finding out, because when you do that in the purest way, I believe that opens more doors than if you do that to expect a fixed outcome. I
think you're absolutely right in that, because you see, I'm still trying to make better photographs. Now, people may say, you're having an exhibition here, or you're exhibiting here, or you're doing this. But if I get into a safety zone, I don't try anymore. I think, right, so that's, you've achieved. But in terms of the scope of this world, we've achieved so little. And in terms of the artistic practice, I mean, how many artists, creative people, they've been trying to make, conceive, deliver, and it's pure negative. People are just kind of casting them by the wayside. But they've found a way of, look, I just have to get this thing out there. And out of 100 people, you may get 1 or 2 people who appreciate the work that you've done. But within those 1 or 2 people, there may be that person, that one. And then once you kind of, your spirits collide, then that person finds a connection with you. And then it opens up a whole new raft of, as you say, opportunities. But the fear factor, you still need to have that fear factor. Mm-hmm. You still need to have that adrenaline going. Every time I'm involved in an exhibition, or I'm doing some talks at the end of the month, and there's that fear factor there of putting your work on the wall. And you have no control over who comes through. And there's been an occasion where I've gone into galleries, nobody knows it's me. And I'm able to stand looking at the work, and I hear comments. And I think, you've got it all wrong. But I can't say anything. And then you get people just come in, they take one look at your work, and then they go straight past it. Or people get engrossed by it. But that's the human nature of things. It's like a great song, isn't it? What you like is not what I like. But maybe in 5, 10, 15 years' time, the song that you suggested to me, it aligns with what I'm going through at the particular moment. And I think that's the same thing with this creative world of ours. And it's just so fantastic. And I'm also discovering so many different artists just through this thing called internet and this thing called social media. I'm finding so many people, and I'm connecting with people who I didn't even think would connect with my work. And in turn, I wouldn't connect with theirs. But we have that kinship. And that kinship is about, I always say, taking what's in there, letting it go down your arm, and then it manifests itself in a piece of art. And that's the thing that we all have. And I think once we kind of have the fear, but then throw it away, and then work on what we need to work with, then draw the fear back, and then start working again. But that's just my mantra, as well of having the fear, but also having the courage of just do it. Mm-hmm. Just do, the only person stopping you is you.
You're absolutely right. You have to get out of your own way, don't you? And learn to manage that fear and try to take a better control of it, which is not always possible. Of course, we're all human, we're all vulnerable. But, I heard it said that the 3 inescapables in life are pain, uncertainty, and constant work. If you can make peace with that and weave that somehow into the way that you respond,
I'm
to
going
things
through
that
all three. I'm going through all three at the moment.
all of the time. Yeah.
Of course, all of the time. All of the time. They're co-joined. This trio that you have to kind of deal with. So you think you get rid of one, but you don't. And then number two aligned with number one, and one, joins with three. Then number two comes out of the frame, and then three and one, they join, but they're all kind of helping you to connect and interweave with like who you are, because I still don't know who I am. I'd like to think that I do, but every day, every week, we're all these different people. And as artists, we can be very hard to understand, because only sometimes other artists or a small minority of the public really understand what it's about. Because, as you know, you can draw the picture, paint the picture, design the clothes, take the photograph, make a piece of sculpture. But then, so that's, in a way, that's the easy part. The second part is actually getting it out there and getting someone to trust you enough to say, we will take this thing and we will move it to another place, whether it be a gallery, whether it be to a publisher's, whether it be to a TV producer. So, we're having all of those things which we're dealing with at any one point based upon this one image or this one thing. And this one thing says so much to so many different people. I remember I had an exhibition many, many years ago, and it was called the famous, the infamous, and the not yet. And it was photographs of celebrities who had photographed, portraits, everybody from Julie Christie to Stevie Wonder, Craig Charles, there was Desmond Tutu. And the woman, she said to me, is this your work? And I said, yes. And she said, I don't believe they're yours. And I said, why? She said, because you don't look like the kind of person to meet these people. And I said, well, I have the negatives. She said, I know what you're saying, but you don't look like the person to take these type of photographs. And I would say that time I was a little slighted by that. But later on, I understood that I didn't fit the narrative of what she thought the person who took these photographs should look like. And that was, again, a great reopening. Another one of the keys that I had to use to unlock the doors of people's understanding of what they like, what they dislike. And you can't force everybody to love your work. That's the main thing.
Of course not. Of course not. And you have to trust they will find the people that do. I want to ask you, you mentioned there about the solidarity with Irish people. Did you face prejudice when you moved to the UK? And if so, at what age did you become consciously aware of that?
Do you want to hear what they used to call us? Is that okay?
Please, yeah, of course it is. Please do.
Okay. At school, I remember being called a Sambo for the first time. And I had no idea what a Sambo was. I remember being called a wog. I had no idea what a wog was. I mean, I knew what a darkie was, but all those terms, I had no idea of what they were. And it was only a friend of mine who was a bit older. He explained what a Sambo was, and it was a very kind of negative stereotype for Black people. And it was only then that I realized that there was this thing called racism, but it actually wasn't called racism in my sphere. It was just that person didn't like you because of the color. There were a lot of fights at school between Black and white kids, as we used to call ourselves then. There was a lot of that was kind of going on. But I think because the Irish, as far as I knew, had gone through similar elements of coming to England, and the British didn't really align with them. That was at that time. People who are listening to this now, they also, it's not like that because I'm married to an Irishman, I'm married to an Irishwoman. But that's how it was at the time. So us as Blacks and Irish, we kind of more aligned together. I remember my best white friend is a guy called Dennis Lawless, and they lived down the road from us. And I remember we used to go into the house, and his mother, she used to say, come on in, Darky. Come on in and get some Irish stew. But the way she said it, it didn't seem as though it was prejudice, because that's just the term that they kind of used. But and then they in turn, or he in turn, would come to our house and eat food, sit around. But his father was a coalman, and if you talk about darky, his skin was so dark, covered in coal soot, that he was the darky.
Yeah.
Much more than I was. So those are the kind of elements as a young child. Later on in life, the language became much more obscene in terms of what we used to be called. But again, we just dealt with it in the best way possible. As I said, sometimes, it may turn into like fisticuffs, or, people just, running after people. But it was a strange time, I think, for us. And it was only, let's say, later on in life that you can understand that a lot of it was based upon ignorance of people using terms and not knowing what they were at all. And I do believe that we actually have become much more tolerant. I'm sure there are pockets and elements of people who don't like people for all kinds of reasons. Of course there is. But in a way, I have to kind of forgive, because I think if I held on to all that kind of bad attitude, it would affect me even more. So I'll say, this is the way that you thought at the time, but I forgive you because you didn't really know what you were doing or you were saying, or it was informed by the people you were around, or maybe the books that you're reading at school, because a lot of those books, as I said earlier, had a lot of negative stereotypes of who we were as Caribbean people. One boy said to me, he said, "Where are you from?" He said, "Do they have lions there?" And I went, "I've never seen a lion in my life." And he said, "What about giraffes?" I said, "No." I said, "The only time I saw a lion or a giraffe was when we went to the local zoo on a school trip." So they couldn't believe that. Then I remember one boy, he said to me, "Do you have black blood?"
Wow.
And I said, "No." So they were all, so what I'm saying about ignorance, it wasn't, it wasn't racism, it was just ignorance on their part, because they didn't know. There were an influx of people of a different color coming into your community, and possibly the first time that you've been dealing with these people en masse. So, somebody might say to the mother or father, "Who's that? Who are they?" And they maybe didn't know about Jamaica or St. Kitts or St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados. So they would just say, "They're darkies." And that was it. But once we got to know each other, you realize that, we were just kids, running around and playing marbles and scrumping for apples, gooseberries as well. Thinking like gooseberries and just having fun and just being around each other. And I always cherish those times.
Absolutely. And you mentioned forgiveness there, and has your art helped you to do that, to forgive and to make peace, and or even to take some form of ownership over those experiences? I know that in my own life, my creativity is an essential outlet. I'm very sensitive. That's what makes me good at the work that I do as an illustrator, as a writer, and my ability to work with people and do interviews. The flip side of that is that I feel strongly all things good and bad, and therefore my creativity is an essential outlet to write through the insurmountables, to draw the monsters in my life. Is that something you've experienced also?
I think travel and the range of jobs that I've had have actually put me into close proximity with people that I wouldn't see on a day-to-day basis. You go into a shop or you walk past somebody, but when you're going into a workplace, day in, day out, you start to understand the little influences within their life and your life, and also travel as well. I've managed to travel to some fantastic places, which I never thought I would so that then, so this is how you do this thing. This is how you talk. This is how your newspapers report this thing. This is what you eat. This is how this person lives here and this other person lives here. So I then become much more tolerant, but only by travel and also taking the photographs that I've taken and really studying them and seeing, okay, so I have this bank of memories of not just walking the streets of these places, but also sitting down and getting the sun on you, or the cold, or the rain, or going by train, stopping off at various places, engaging with listening to language. And in some instances, you might hear a phrase or a word, and you said, "That's how we would say it." So it's given me an element to forgive. But again, you never know who you're going to encounter tomorrow, which makes you think, I forgave that, but now I've still got to deal with this thing that I thought is no longer in my life. So I've still got that kind of that pocketbook, which is ready to respond to any negative, but I try and be where possible. And I know it's easy to say to try and be as positive as possible, but human beings, we're not like that, unfortunately. And you turn on the radio and like what's happening in the world today, and we try to say, well, it doesn't affect me, but it does in all kinds of ways. So I'll try and say, well, they're doing what they're doing because they feel that it's right. And me as a human being, me as a singular individual, I actually can't change that. The only thing that I can do is by my work, placing it to the feet of so many different people and hopefully creating some kind of narrative to like or dislike, to engage or disengage with. But I just do feel that as creative people, we have so much power to place our work out, and especially through social media. Now you don't have to wait for newspapers to publish your work. You press a button and your work goes out to thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. And I've found that a good stabilizing force in understanding like who I am. And I'm going back to the fear factor of not having the fear of who's going to see your work. And also saying, well, I'm placing this here now just for you to just take a little bit of me and try and understand where I'm coming from and who I am, although you don't know me personally. But I think as time goes by, when you say the images or the work I've done in TV, for instance, you start to see a style and you say, this is what this person is here, because I'm just one of millions of creative people, this big wheel of creativity. I'm just this tiny little tread on it, contributing to world peace, because in hundreds of years' times, when they look back in these times, what we've put out there is what people are going to navigate. We're creating our own visual history books at this moment for them to go back. And so this happened in 86, 87, 2006, 2023, 24, 25. So we're just producing work, but also the ability to enforce our own thoughts as well. So where you've got an image now, you can create a narrative to go with that image. So we are reporters, we are journalists, using our own work to spread good and bad, because there is good and bad art. There's good and bad in terms of images, but we just try and do the best that we can. And all I can do is do what little I can to the best of my ability.
You can, and going back to what we said earlier, I do believe that these decisions, much like not knowing who's next or who's watching or what's behind the veil, so to speak, you can never quite tell. The tiniest of actions, the tiniest of moments, one image can change your life. So I think it's really important to retain the faith in that and to keep doing it with that same purity that will really empower that work. I'm a big believer in that. To ask about the photography in particular, when did you connect with the camera, or when did you first start to think that this was something that you would pursue, or when did you start to do this with regularity?
Well, I started in this art world as a pointillist painter, and I was influenced by French artists Seurat and Pizarro, and I built up a small body of work. Got some exhibitions, like at Leicester Museum and Art Gallery and the Graves Art Gallery and a few other galleries around England. And then there was a family member who encouraged me to come to New York. He knew somebody a curator who worked in a gallery. So he ordered me in a way, you need to come. So I got to America and I had my little case with all my work in there. And I met this, it was a female curator. And she said, I live somewhere, I think it was in Greenwich Village. Here, come here. So got there took my work up, opened up the portfolio, put the work down, and she took about 30 seconds to look at the work, and she said, "Before you leave, would you like something to drink?" And if you've ever known perspiration run down into my belt, I was so devastated by it. So packed everything up. And I was quite angry, quite sad, because again, curators, they had the power to do everything. So I got back to where I was staying, put the work down, and then had a little Instamatic camera. So I just started going around like Bronx, Harlem, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, just taking photographs. It was a 110 film camera, just taking photographs. Literally just like that. Came back to England, developed them, and I thought, this is interesting. And we had there was a little community centre called SPAM, Saltley Print and Media in Birmingham. And they had a dark room downstairs, so they allowed me to develop the work. Those are the times you'd immerse your hands in so much chemicals. You didn't have the money to go to these places like Dixon's and places like that. So that's what I did, and then put them together, and I called it Instamatic Views of New York. And they were using text taken from newspapers I bought in America and combining that collage, combining them with the images. And I started to show them around, and again, I managed to get some exhibitions. Warsaw Art Gallery gave an exhibition. Heckman White Art Gallery. There was Birmingham, Midlands Art Centre in Birmingham, gave an exhibition. So that kind of really gave me the confidence. But to go back to New York, while I was in Greenwich Village, I was buying an LP by Gil Scott-Heron. It's called Secrets. So while I was in this bookshop, I saw this book by a photographer called Diane Arbus. And it was a photograph of twins on the front cover. And I picked it up and started to flick through it. And I think what it showed me was that I didn't have to be perfect. My work didn't have to be perfect. I was going back, and this one's blurry, this one's pin sharp. This is out of scale. The composition is all wrong. So what I started to do, well, I actually don't have to be perfect. So when I got back to England, I got myself a little camera. It's a 35mm Canon Sure Shot, which I bought in the 80s. It cost a lot of money then. And that's the one I always kind of used, and up to now, that's the same one I've used. It's held together by a bit of tape. So all the images that you've seen, the black and white images, they were taken with this Canon Sure Shot. So that's how I got into photography, just by taking photographs, making mistakes, taking more photographs, making mistakes. The amount of time that I took a roll of film and it rewound back and I forgot, and then I photographed on top of it. Oh, man, the amount of mistakes. I'm telling you, the amount of mistakes that I made, just by learning, and because the lens is fixed, you can't actually put a telephoto onto it. So you have to kind of really get close into the images, and then the flash is about as small as a stamp. So again, you have to use like available lights, and it's allowed me to understand about the type of photography that I want to take. I'm not Ansel Adams. I'm not Cartier-Bresson. I'm not Gordon Parks. I'm not Annie Leibovitz. But I admire their work. But I do work in the best way that I can. And I don't tend. If I take a photograph and it's very blurry, then it's very blurry. There's nothing I can go into Photoshop, but there's nothing I can do about it. But I like to show that you can be creative by not being perfect. Because I think in trying to chase perfection through your art, you may come with problems. That if it's not perfect, I can't put it out there. Because I know there's some of my photographer siblings, I'll say, put the work out there. No, I don't think I can, but put it out there. But I know secretly they're worried that they may not get a click or a like or something. But I have no fear of that, to be honest with you. As I said earlier, if you like my work, you like it. If you don't like it, That's okay. You don't like everything. It's like, I don't like rhubarb. You may do.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, so there's so many different um, similarities, but yet uncertainties about who we are. And by me not being always in front of the camera, just saying, look, here's a body of work that I took in South Africa or Albania or South America, Scandinavia. Here it is. This is my visual diary. And I'm laying it in front of you. And if out of the four, you align yourself with one, I'm happy. If the others, doesn't matter. Because somebody else may like 3 and 4, but may not like 1 and 2. And that's how I kind of work out my the rhythms, the kind of the electric way in which we utilize work, and the way that we take work, and the way that it's placed within a framework of that perfection. But we're not perfect. So if a person then may not be not perfect on the day that they're going to see the work, and you expect them to align the perfection that you've got on the wall, they may have had a bad day. So they don't want to see a pretty picture of flowers or people smiling. They may want to see something more guttural. Or they may have heard about something and have never seen an image that suddenly you present it to them. So you have to add all of those elements together. So it's much more than just taking the image or creating the image. There's so much that kind of goes with this as well.
I take so much joy from that evaluation process too, and assessing whether that mistake should live or not. But it's beautiful that it can go either way. I'm so far from a perfectionist, but I do also have great respect for my craft enough to bring that evaluation about. So that's where I take a lot of my joy in the creative process. And I believe you still work on film. Is that the case?
Yes, I do. Do you want to go back to the film days?
I mean, yeah, I'm interested in that scarcity and what that forces you to make decisions in real time, maybe more so than the ubiquity of digital, I guess.
Well, we have to kind of go back to the 80s, because when I was a pointillist painter, I was asked to put on an exhibition at Birmingham University, the University of Birmingham, and it was for a students' union conference. So I took my work and I nailed them all up on the space. I waited for all these students to come through. Nobody came in. Only one guy, he had a big afro and big glasses and a big bushy beard. And he looked around, he said, so who did these? I said, I did. So he said, are these for sale? Gulp. So I said, it must have been something about 10 or 20 pounds. Big money those days. And this guy said, okay, I'll buy 2 of them. And he said, well, what's your phone number? I gave him my phone number. And that guy was Trevor Phillips. Sir Trevor Phillips, the broadcaster.
Yeah.
It was him, yeah. So about a year later, he called me and he said, I'm now working for London Weekend Television. I'm doing some magazine type program, and I'd like you to do some work for us. And he said what the money was, which was great at the time. So I did some work for that production. I can't remember the name of it. And then later on, he got back and he said, I'm now working on a program called Black on Black, which is a multicultural program. And it was made by LWT and went out on Channel 4. And he then said, because you know the Midlands, we'd like you to set up a number of interviews for us. In effect, kind of line produce. Where he said, you can line produce, but you can't get a credit because I wasn't a member of BEC2. So I set up these programs from Birmingham. You know, artists and singers and musicians, all kinds of people, poets. And he said, well, we've got this young poet that we're going to use. Instead of doing links into the items, we're going to use a poet where he's going to have to come and stay with you in Birmingham so that when the crew comes up, we can work it all out. And that poet was Craig Charles. So he used to stay at our house, write his poems. And then when the crew came up, so instead of saying, and now let me introduce you to, he created a poem. So I did that for a while, and there was another program that he did called Club Mix. But all the time I'm learning about the craft of program making. It wasn't digital; it was all analog then. But I was still working in at a place called WeMass. So convoluted. It'll make sense in a minute, Ben. So there's an organization called WeMass that I was working at during the week. So on the weekends, I would work for effectively Trevor Phillips. And then on the weekends, if I needed to go to London to have meetings with them, I would do. 1985 happens, and the Handsworth riots. So I covered the Handsworth riots. And then Trevor, or one of the researchers, got in touch with me and said, we want to do a documentary about the riots. Are you able to set that up for us? I said, yes, I can do. So again, I line produced that. Again, no credit because I wasn't a member of BEC2. And he said, also, we're going to hold a conference about racism in Birmingham. Can you organize that? And through my work in the arts, I was able to do that at a place called the Triangle Arts Centre in Birmingham. So made that documentary, and it went out later on in 1985 on Channel 10 and Channel 4. Then there was a gentleman called Zia Moyedin, who's a very famous Asian actor who's passed away now. He produced a program called Here and Now, which is a multicultural program for Central Television. He saw the documentary, and his secretary called me and said, Zia would like to have lunch with you. I went and had lunch with him. He offered me a job as a television presenter. That was 1985, but I couldn't start because I had to arrange the funding for WeMass, the arts organization. I had to. So I didn't start becoming a television presenter until 1986. That was the first time I learned to be a television presenter. Nervous as, this massive, great big studio with the lights and boom and, 3 cameras on you. But as I said to you, I learned very, 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 very quickly. And so, bringing people like famous reggae artists like Burning Spear and Dennis Brown. I remember seeing people like Salman Rushdie come into the studio, early Lenny Henry. There was Imran Khan. So many people came to the studio that I got access to. So going back to that, meeting people and being, wow, I've read about you, but just being around you. So I, did that, sort of pulled in so much information from them and listened and listened how people talked and how they covered themselves and learned about what the red light meant and the boom and, you got like, winding down and like 2, 1, cut. Just learned so many different things about the production process. And then there was one of the directors called David Maloney. I'll always remember him. He used to work on a series called Z Cars from way, way back in the day. And we'd sit down and he said, okay, so what's the story? And there was a story by a South African artist called Gavin Yantis. And he did a series called Corroborate. So while I was running WeMass, I organized for him to have a residency at Coventry, at a centre in Coventry. So when I got into TV, I said to David, I'd like to make a small film on him. So David said, sit down and tell me the story. Sat down, told him the story. And he said, you just told me the whole film. He said, why don't you direct it? Man, I was nervous. I was so nervous. So I'm going to grab this, by the horns. Did that. So there's me going 1, 2, 3, action. Did I feel boastful? Did I feel great? I really, really felt great. And then after we made the film and went to the archive, got a lot of footage and also got a lot of music. Then started to really learn about acquiring archive and how much it costs, utilizing music and going through publishers, songwriters. So, learned and understood all about that. All through this time, I'm still taking photographs. I'm still taking all of these photographs. So Here and Now comes to an end. Then get a job. I was asked to go into the newsroom, so I became a news reporter for Central News. So I did that for a period of time. Didn't really like it that much because it was just so full on. And some of the things that you saw as a news reporter, it could affect you because on a daily basis, you could go from a newborn baby being born to there was an accident on the M6. And I don't think that really kind of chimed with me. But I learned about being in front of the camera and making these packages, news packages, for about 30 seconds or so. So we moved from that. Then there was another program I worked called Central Weekend, who was actually hosted by Nikki Campbell. And that was like a current affairs program I went to every night. So I did a few little bits of work on that. Then I did some more programs which weren't really my style, but I had to force myself to learn about navigating how programs are made. And we come to 1995 now, and Central TV, they're kind of merging with Carlton TV. And one of the heads of production said, we want to change up the multicultural department. Can you write a proposal? So I wrote a proposal for a thing called Night Train Express. So again, a multicultural program which incorporated everything. And lo and behold, I had to make a few changes. But then they gave me the responsibility of making the programs for the multicultural department. And so that was that. And then afterwards, there was a programs called Express, which was sports programs, documentary, which I produced and directed, people like Lennox Lewis and Martin of Fire. But again, I'm just learning about my craft, really learning about my craft. 96, I got headhunted by the BBC in Manchester, down at Oxford Road. So I went to work in Oxford Road on a program called The A-Force, which went out late at night. And I was the senior producer, director. Then they sent me to Canada. So I worked with Dave Chappelle, Isaac Hayes, John Singleton. He made The Boys in the Hood. Who else was there? And somebody else. Anyway, learned about, again, the production. And then I was over in Italy, making programs on black footballers at AC Milan. So again, and I know it seems very convoluted, but for me, it was all about the creative process. From making still images to moving images, they were kind of one in the same. So I just really started to learn about, this is how you make programs. This is how you get rid of so much. And then you concentrate on this. This is how you use music to enhance, how you use lighting, how you shoot much more than you need to, to create the one package. So that's how I kind of learned. And then, I had a high-8 camera. So I'll just use a high-8 camera to film all kinds of things. I'm literally just film all kinds of things, during those times, as well as working within television. And so that's how it all started for me. Nobody taught me. I just looked at how it was done and I just picked it up. And literally that was it, to what I'm kind of doing now. But also, it's important to know that you're working with great people, because without a team,
yes,
you're nothing. So although I'm saying I did this and I did this and I did that, but without teams, you can't. But also that team has to align with you as well, because again, if the program doesn't work, I'm the one who gets kicked in the butt. If it succeeds, we can go into the pub and have a pint. So I always just align myself to working with some fantastic people, and also people that have worked on great programs in the past, but also are willing to go with somebody who comes from, in a way, a kind of photographic background. How do you transpose that photographic background into like that moving image? I know when we were working on The Tiny Spark, the film that I did with Benjamin Zephaniah, his poems and my photography. And I remember that I said to him, look, Benjamin, I really want to use your poems to go with my work. And he said, I've never done that before. So for a good few years, he would send me poems from wherever he was in the world. And I'd send him photographs. But he would always ask, does that fit? Does that fit? The majority of the time they did fit, but they didn't. So now that he's passed away, and I was, talking to his wife about those times, and she said to me, she said, do you know when you told Benjamin that you wanted to make a film utilizing his poems? And he said to her, I know what he said, but I don't know how he's going to do it. I can't work out how he's going to do it at all. And going back to Benjamin, we worked on 3 projects together. And I would say for somebody who gave me so much grace, so much trust to take his work and effectively do what I want to with it, I have to kind of give blessings. So he's entrusted me with such a legacy of that work. But, again, the work that he's entrusted me with such a tiny amount to the catalogues of work that he's produced over the years. So the creative spirit, still image, moving image, I just see them as one thing. But when I do work with digital, I try and use it to a minimal amount. But I still love, and there's something about analog. It's grainy, it's rough. It's as though, you've run sandpaper over it. It's got watermarks on it. It's got so much noise in it. There's just this thing about analog. It just has this thing, and I love it to death.
Yeah, it's incredible, and you hit upon something that's crucial there, and it's the personal voice. It runs through everything. This is something I've learned. I've always had the kind of brain that needs variation, and I follow my curiosity, and my bill payer to this day remains illustration. But around that, I've started this podcast. I interviewing is using my empathy and my sensitivity as a human that was already there. I was born with that. All of the things, the way that I write, across all the mediums, it's the same human and the same lived experience underneath it. And when you start to build trust in that, it really can become an amazing journey. And you have to I heard it termed as circle of competence, and I liked that. Because I had in my younger years, I had a tendency to go too far outside of that circle of competence, and you get stories though, and mistakes are really healthy because that helps you to learn what you shouldn't be doing, and is best left to somebody better equipped to do that. But I love that journey. I love the discovery. I love trying the new things and the collaborations, because creativity is contagious. But
not everybody can actually take what you have and make it into this thing that you want. So this circle of competence, but then I think I have a circle of confidence.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and if I can bring sometimes people into my circle of confidence and say, look, we're all in this thing together, right? Let's join hands. Let all our kind of brain patterns connect and make this tiny thing into something much bigger. So I do have this feeling that, your sensitivity, understanding, but in the end, only you know what you're about.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you try and explain it to people, and no matter what you say to them, they just can't get it. I've had situations where people have come to me and said, we want to do this thing. And I go, what you want to do with my work? I don't think so. Or I say, maybe come back in 6 months or a year's time. But at this moment, what you're suggesting doesn't really kind of chime with me. But that's about me having confidence with my own judgment. But sometimes that judgment is completely wrong. But I'll stand with that. Right? I'll stand there and say, if I'm making this judgment, but it's like, you walk into a room and you get aligned to somebody and you end up talking to them all night and you go, wow, I didn't know anybody. And now we're talking, suddenly you find that you have so many things in common. But why did you know you had those things in common? You didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a kind of magnetic, electronic element to your personality that drew you to each other. And then the reason why that person didn't walk away after 5 minutes, or you walked away, or you walk away after 5 minutes, but then you find them again. And throughout the evening, you just keep finding them. See, I mean, I did a masterclass at the National Portrait Gallery recently, and there were, I think, 14 or 15 students, I'd call them, and out of those 14 or 15, I think there's only one that kind of keeps in touch with me. I mean, 2 contacted me, but only one keeps in contact. And we have these riveting conversations about photography, but about so many other things. And I found out so many things about this person, where they grew up, what they did for a living. And, here we are. Why you, of all people, align yourself with me and vice versa. So always have that confidence that you never know who you're going to come across. And you never know what they're going to bring to that table. And what they bring to that table, sometimes you can only eat and drink so much.
Yeah.
And you mustn't eat and drink everything. You have to leave a little bit, maybe for next week, or for the other person to satisfy themselves visually into what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, you do. You're absolutely right, because that variation and that community that then encourages is really important too. It gives back. I'd like to touch on the Handsworth riots, if that's okay. But tell me about that experience. I'm really interested in kind of, maybe it's the wrong term for it, but responsive creativity. That instinctive burst that this is something that I must record or engage with. So talk to me about that experience.
The Handsworth riots. I mean, at the time, as I was saying to you earlier, I ran an arts organisation in Handsworth, and I'd finished for the day, and then got home, and then a friend of mine phoned up and he said, "You better get back to Handsworth, because it's on fire." So I turned on the news, the local BBC News, BBC Midlands News, and he said, "Yes, Handsworth, it's ablaze." So I had a little what did I have? Either Ford Anglia or a Mini Minor. I think it might have been a Mini. Well, this Mini, you had to push it and you had to crank. you had to crank it to start. So I opened it up and I had my camera and I threw in so many rolls of film, because rolls of films were very cheap then. And I drove back to Handsworth, had the radio on, was listening, couldn't make head or sense of it. And then I parked in an area called Newtown and parked my car, and as I'm going up, there are actually people coming that way. And I'm asking what's happening. The police, and there's riots, and there's fighting, there's looting, all of these things going. So you're picking up all these bits of information. But as I get closer to the Lozells Road, which is the main drag of it, this smoke was really kind of choking me. So I think at that point I just took my camera out. I had a little wind cheater, zipped up jacket at the time, and I think I had zips on the pockets, and the film was in the pockets. And when I hit Lozells Road, that's when all hell broke loose. There was cars overturned, cars on fire. There was bricks, bottles, stones. Police were chasing. The rioters were chasing people. And I'd like to kind of state that it was a combination of black, white, and a few Asian people who were against the police. They've tried to make it into some kind of race riot, but it wasn't. It was a community against the police. So again, I just started taking photographs, running with the rioters and going to find where the police were and taking photographs from different kinds of vantage points. And then, unzipping, putting my camera back in and then moving. I think if I had a bigger camera at the time, more than likely it would have been maybe taken off me or broken. But because my camera is seen as a stupid looking camera, they probably just thought, what's this person doing? So I just got myself embroiled in it. The adrenaline's running, fear, enlightenment, excitement, worried about a bottle or a brick would come down and hit me, worried about if the police would grab me, because at the time, black was black. So that's what they would do. And then the police, they had these snatch squads that they would just snatch people and put them in the back of these vans. I'm seeing cars upturn, people taking the petrol out, putting it all around the cars, putting in bits of materials, lighting them. overturning cars and using them as barricades, like dominoes, because what that would do would actually stop the police guns from getting through. So it's very tactical in the way that this whole thing was kind of run. Now, people say, what was it caused by? As far as I know, and it was told to me that a lot of time there was a traffic violation, a young black man, and the police stopped him. They were told to let him go. They wouldn't let him go. And the escalation, it escalated into this kind of spiral of violence, unfortunately. But going back to the reasons why, I just knew that I needed to document this thing. Because on television, I've seen riots before. On television, I've seen documentaries. But being there, I just knew that I had to document this particular thing, not knowing that maybe decades later. I mean, it'll be 40 years this year.
Wow.
That the riots, yeah. So not knowing that it would have any kind of cultural value. And I just started taking, I'm sure I lost some of the film along the way, running up and down, I'm sure, because the film that I do have, I'm sure there was much more, but I actually can't remember. So it was my way of saying, I was there, I witnessed this as well. There were people from the national newspapers that were there. There were other people taking photographs as well. And I just wanted to believe that this is what I saw, this is what I'm going to document. And again, this will have some kind of history to it, to say that this is how we saw it, because the newspapers the next day, if you saw the headlines, you'd think that, we were in South Africa or, the deep south of America. And the way that they were kind of painting it, it wasn't, like riot to death and, black people are doing this. And, there's one photograph, very famous photograph of a black guy with a firebomb in his hand, and that hit one of the major newspapers. And, if you're looking at that out of isolation, you can have a kind of really differential take on us as people of color. But there was hardly any mention of white people or Asian people. It was always us as the blacks who were kind of painted that way. So, in a way, I think I managed to get through that. Or I thought I did, but every now and again it keeps coming back, and when I look at the images, I do remember what was before and what was after. Because those little 1 seconds, only that 1 second out of that period of time. So you kind of skip a little bit. And one of the local newspapers, no, not local, one of the national newspapers got in touch with me. How they knew where to find me, I don't know. But they wanted to send a reporter or a journalist to Birmingham to look at the photographs that I've taken. And they offered me a sum of money. I just said, no. Because remember that I wasn't aware of what the images were on the film. How they knew, I had no idea whatsoever. So I said no. And it was only years and decades later that I actually opened up the canister, took them to the lab, then actually really saw what I'd taken. And
how did it feel with that stretch of time in between when you came to see these images? As obviously you'd grown as a person by this point, how did it feel then with the expanse of time in between?
Well, you're going to stand between, from 80. Remember, I was working for TV as well, all the way through that, and I was taking other photographs of, like celebrities, situations, places. I was traveling, so there were like another set of photographs that were in the archive. So when I opened them up and when I took them to the lab and I saw them, but even then, I actually put them down. I didn't show anybody them because I was quite frightened that if anybody was to get hold of them, certain people may get arrested, because on the negative or the contact sheets, you could see the faces of a number of people who were doing unlawful things. And I sat with them for a while, but then I got the scissors and I cut the legs up. I just cut them up because you could see the faces so clearly. And I don't know whether I was strong enough, even like now in 2025, to bring some of those photographs out. So I just cut them up. So they're gone. They're gone now. They're gone. That's it. I mean, I know who they are. There's one quite well-known photograph of a man with a mask on, a balaclava on. I mean, I know who that person is. I mean, I know who he is. But again, I mean, I've never tell anybody. And from the back of a number of people, I know who they are. But again, I'd never tell anybody. So looking at them and bringing them out to the public, but then having the right context in which to release them with, I think, authoritative and informative context and writing, it works for me now. So I don't mind having them out there because, again, they provide a visual journey of those 9 to 11, from 9th of September to the 11th, of when it occurred, and then the elements that continued after the 11th, of course. But going back to Handsworth and going back to some of those roads, I do remember with full throttle what it was like as a youngish, man of African Caribbean descent, going through those things, and also trying to remember where, I was, getting food. And did I sleep? I can't remember sleeping at all. Or did I go to somebody's house and sleep on their couch? I can't remember. Actually, did I change clothes? I can't remember. I can't remember at all.
You speak of the responsibility of artists to make such decisions, and the ripple effect of that. We live in a very concerning age. Call it post-truth, call it agenda, I don't know, but I feel that art has a really critical role to play in balancing these agendas. And I think that there's an honesty to what you do, both in process, style, you as a human being behind the work, and a lived, shared experience, communal experience. I find it utterly fascinating. I wasn't, when I studied at university, I studied illustration, but I hadn't felt it click yet to a point with me as a human being. I knew I was good at it. I knew that this was probably the best option I had as a career. But a changing point for me was when I chose to study graphic activism for my dissertation. And this opened up a world of people who felt and who wanted to make a better place by using their lens, their comment. People like Banksy and Black Larat, and then writers, and then something about the range of medium and the choice within those mediums just was beautiful to me. And so therefore I've always given my time to causes I believe in. I love to have conversations like these, to share other stories, and I will do for the rest of my life, because I think it's really, really important.
Well, it's important, yes, but you see, these days where now everybody's got a lens, everybody has a lens to cover. And it's so immediate what's happening abroad, especially what's happening in the Middle East. Immediately you can find out what's kind of happening. So we've got those lenses. So it's important to use those lenses in the right way. See, it's important to do that, because you never know in life how your narrative aligns with what's kind of happening. Now, I always say, you see, I'm an analog person who's surviving in a digital world. That's what I'm doing. And when you're looking back at those archives and those photographs and saying, well, I'm investigating my truth, and I'm still trying to find out what my truth is, because I actually don't know.
No.
I'd like to think I do. And even when I talk to people and they say, tell us why did you do this and why? And I have to say, sometimes I actually don't know. I just found it of interest. 10 years later, it may become relevant. But with artists who I think go way beyond, not even way beyond, because to us it's way beyond, but to them, like Banksy, it's natural. But to us, it's like it's way beyond. But it's not way beyond. People may say it went way beyond you putting yourself in a situation where you could have got arrested, hit by a bottle, hit by a brick. It was just the way. It was just the way that it was. It wasn't going. It was like, this is happening. I'm going to do that. If something's happening in the city centre, and I think I want to go and photograph it, I'm not going way beyond. I'm just going to effectively have a look And if there's anything within me having a look, forces me to take up the camera and click that lens, it's not going way beyond. It's going into what I find is relevant at the time. So if you can allow people scope to look at how activism presents itself, and it can be very upfront in your face or very subtle. I really love the subtleness. I love how it kind of washes over you, and I think I understand, but I don't. And then a year later, I think I understand, but I don't. And then I might read an article by it said, that's what you meant. Got you now. That's what I got you now. So it's a subtlety, because everybody mustn't like what you do immediately.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do.
You can, and I think that there's great importance in not knowing truly yourself and also the work that you're making at the time, because I like to believe that feeling, that instinctive pull is bigger than us, and therefore if we lean into that and make what feels good to us at the time, that its onward cycle will do the rest. You know, it will find its way into the hands of those people who we could never imagine would find our work, and it will move them in some way that is, you know, you could sit and speculate all day long, but I just think that when in this work around creativity, especially, this has become a life cause for me. And the more I follow it, the more I heard it termed as invisible hands, the feeling that invisible hands are helping you along a path that was already there. That's the best I have for it. But these serendipitous moments keep happening. You know, the fact that we're talking today is another one of those moments, and the projects I get to work on through that work. And it brings about the fear and doubt that we also talked about earlier. But ultimately, those little moments keep going. You're on the right path. Keep going. Keep going. You don't need to know it. You can't ever know it. But find the excitement in that.
No, it is the invisible hands, yes, because you just never know who's going to come along and give you the helping hand. You never have any idea. And use that circle to place your magic inside of it. And place that plate for everybody to eat from. Place that vessel of creativity for people to sup from, because you just never, ever know. And sometimes the helping hand that you're being given, sometimes people need much more of a helping hand than they actually admit to. So when I say I have to show my failings by, hey, guess what? You know, I thought I took this great photograph, but it turned out terrible. I've actually, I've reshot over film. I didn't have to admit that, because now it's out there on the internet for everybody to go, he makes mistakes. Of course I make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then there are things which I make which I think are perfect, but they're only perfect for me. So those helping hands and those people that come along in your life, and those people that enable you and trust you to say that what you're doing is great. What you're doing has value. Pass it on, because not everybody is lucky to have those invisible mentors. You have those mentors that you can see, but there's so many other invisible mentors that are out there, and you just don't know that they're working for the betterment of you. So you have to kind of give the same thing. You see, I have this mantra which I say, people say that, there's this glass ceiling, and it's there and it's over us, and we can't break through this glass ceiling. But I have this thing that if you try and break through the glass ceiling, what's going to happen? The glass is going to shatter and cut you. That's going to happen. But if you go into the corner of the room, there's always a little chip in the glass ceiling, and you kind of chip away at that, and then that little bit of creative mercury runs down. And if you can kind of harness it in your hand, that's all you need, that little bit. Because once you then throw that creative mercury on the floor, what does it do? It spreads into how many different kinds of molecules.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the science of things and not wanting it too quickly. Because sometimes when you get it too quickly, you just don't know what to do with it. I think that if those photographs from the riots and other photographs, if I'd shown them at that time, I don't think I'd be in the position that I am in now, or I wouldn't be able to do, or wouldn't have been able to understand how relevant those images were, and they still tend to be relevant. When I think, okay, nobody's interested, I get calls and emails from students, and universities want to do something about this work and that work. And I think, wow, there is something in what you've done and continue to do. But if you can just pass that on to people in terms of just pass on that little bit of mentoring, and it could be by just a few words or sending somebody a link. I send links to people about all kinds of things. And some people say, what are you sending me this link for? It's got nothing to do with me. And they go, well, I don't agree with it. I said, I didn't say I agreed with it. I said, I'm just sending you this link to hear this person's opinion upon something that we may have spoke about a few weeks ago, a month ago, or just have a look at it. And they go, well, God, they're so wrong. I don't want to listen to things like this. I don't want to listen to it. But I need to know, it's like newspapers. When we worked in TV, we had every newspaper was delivered. I remember saying to our secretary, why? She said, you need to understand what the Sun is saying or what the Guardian is saying. She said, you need to know so many different kinds of opinions. Yeah. And I thought, because if I don't understand what the editor from this is choosing, I can't see what the opposing side is. So now I have that mantra of taking in everything, so much different kinds of information. Like podcasts, I love podcasts, different kinds of radio, different kinds of TV. I wake up in the morning, I listen to some Mozart. The afternoon I might play some reggae, and the evening I might play some jazz. Then the next day I might, like Irish flute music or Chinese water music. Then I might play some hip hop. So all of those things influence how my day is going to be and my way of thinking. So I'm a great believer in, like we talk about, the circles, how you can, the circles never stop, do they?
No, never ever. And they're always interlinking, and that's wonderful. It's maybe the biggest part of the joy. I don't know what the biggest part is, but it's one of them. It's certainly enriched my life, that's for sure. And that's what art does. And that's why, and to get the most out of that, you have the variation and the exploration is magic.
You see, the magic is there, but the magic will manifest itself in different ways. Yeah. You see, we've got this notion of magic of, Shazam, here it is. But it doesn't work like that.
Nope.
What it does, I think it comes to you in different forms, where you have to gravitate to the one that works for you. Because not every magic works for you. And I think the magic for me is what my eye see, what my eye and the camera captures, what the lens captures, and then finding out, do those things align? And then this is what you've taken. For me, that's the magic. The second magic is placing it out there to the public. The third magic is people giving it respect where possible, and then the debate that it creates around it. So those are kind of different pieces of magic which are kind of floating around this one thing, but it's all down to the confidence that you have to actually place it out there in the first place. Because so many people, as you know, have got fantastic archives. They'll never show it to anybody. Yeah. They write, they'll never show it to anybody. They make music, they may play it to you, they'll never put it out there at all. There's people that take photographs, and I say, why don't you do something with it? Oh, no, I don't think I could do. So there's all this kind of hidden history, which is laying in cupboards, suitcases, drawers, attics, lofts, and nothing's been done with it. And I think to me that's it's a real shame, because what it does is, you see, that work then allows me to understand this person a little bit more. I think I knew you. Well, I didn't know you could write music like this, or I didn't know you wrote poetry like this, or you've got a really keen eye. Wow, I didn't know you visited. When were you in Yugoslavia? Huh? I didn't know this. So you spent time in Mexico. I didn't know that. You went across the border to America. I didn't know this. So suddenly you open up this new vessel of information. and it kind of totally contradicts the person I thought I knew and what I thought I knew about them. And for me, that's another magic. So open up that magic box for me as well, because I can only open my magic box so much.
But I believe that yours being out there in the world, as mine, as the next artist, it does give people courage. It does show people that there's a way, that this is a thing, because too many of us come through school and for a whole other conversation with education, but not knowing this is a thing, or not knowing that there's there's value in that self-expression, and Lord knows we need that in today's world.
Absolutely.
Well, I've kept you long enough, Pogus, but I believe you've got some work showing at the moment in Icon Gallery. Is that right?
Work in the Icon Gallery, Friends in Love and War, and that ends next month. And then work in the Tate Britain as part of the 80s photograph in Britain. So that works there. Both works in both. I've never shown them before, and they're very kind of diverse. And the feedback has been good so far. So again, I'm just giving my blessings that the public out there, and also other photographers, give my work the respect. And I just love the fact that I can continue to do this thing for as long as I can, whether it be making product, whether it be going and talking to people in universities or galleries, or hopefully continue to make visual representations through digital media, and working with interesting people who push me, I push them. But hopefully we go towards a kind of common goal, because without that kind of unity and without that combination of skills, your work's not going to go anywhere at all. And also for curators who trust my work and give it the credence to say, we find this thing of importance. So, give kind of blessings to everybody who kind of engage and allow me to share my work to the world.
Well, I couldn't be happier that, this work has entered my life, and to get to chat to you about it has been an absolute joy. So I'm excited about sharing this with my audience, and thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, you have a good day.
Yeah, you too, Pogus.
Okay, take care, Ben.
Big thank you to Pogus Caesar for taking the time out of a busy schedule to talk to me. What's really great is Pogus's work on film and sticking to that kind of restriction and the beauty of the medium. And yet there we are, we're having this conversation on Zoom. He's on Instagram sending me links. He's very tech savvy. Don't take that as a dinosaur, just like me drawing with my ink pens and my brushes. I love organic medium. I know how to put that in the modern world and work for campaigns and advertising and motion graphics and all sorts. Something beautiful about that collision of analog and digital. And it seems we both love to explore it in our ways. So thank you again, Pogus, for taking the time. A massive thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com. You can check out their global range of illustrator and animator portfolios now. Do support the ui.org.ua. That's a Ukrainian institute supporting the Ukrainian creative community in this horrific time of war. Check out the pit stop session if that's of interest to you. If you need to realign, course correct your creativity, I can help you do that over a 4-hour session. And then I go away and I write up all those notes and I get you recommendations back to realign you with your pure creativity and help you to make better decisions in your life and career. Sold that pretty well there. And that's it. Coming up, we've got some awesome guests. I'm not going to reel them off now. We've got that. We've got more of the Creative Condition Diary, which you can also check out at thecreativecondition.com with all my other resources. That's enough. Thank you once again to Pogus Caesar. Thank you for listening, guys. If you do get a chance to tell a friend, that's one way to sell the show. To share the show. It really helps to promote by just simply recommending. We've all been recommended a podcast that's based on a person's personality and their interests. If you can think of somebody that would like this that might not have come across it, please do that. It really helps. And if you get a second on your chosen platform to rate, review, subscribe, that is also a massively important free way to help me keep doing this, because I do it for the passion, I do it for the love. That's what I'm doing. Cheers. Have a great week.